Hello, everyone. This is Devang. I recently gave a TEDx talk titled A Tale of an Idea Deciphering the Data with Fiction and Technology. And ever since I gave that talk and it recently got released on YouTube, I've been receiving so many messages on Instagram, on Facebook, through mails, asking me what is the software that I have used and how was I able to create the animation in the background and how was I able to weave this fictional story out of this very real problem in the United States. So today, thanks to GoGo Magazine, I will be answering all of those questions one by one. So let's jump on to the first question. That is, how did you get the idea of data plus fiction plus technology? So, almost a year back, I was writing a lot of articles, and one of the articles I wrote was on Orange is the New Black. And I was just amazed that how beautifully was this show able to navigate and talk about these really difficult subjects of, say, women incarceration in the United States, of immigration detention centers, of privatized prisons. And these were the subjects that required a lot of research that needed to be done to tell the stories that are well informed before, because it's a very, very, very difficult subject that needs to be dealt with a lot of responsibility. And this show was able to do that very beautifully and with a lot of art using satire and a lot of humor. Similarly, I also wrote an article on Ek Ladki Ko Dekha To Aisa Laga. And even though Section 377 has been removed in India, it is now Bollywood's responsibility to normalize the conversation around it. So I have always felt that fiction has a very strong power to tell you the stories and to help you experience the stories and lives of people that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I felt that there was this very strong power in fiction or any creative storytelling for that matter. So that's one part of the story. How did the fictional part come into play? For the tech part of it, what happened is that I took a class at Harvard Divinity School where I met my mentor, Mr. Mario Kader Frech. And he has spent a lot of time in the entertainment space. He has worked for Viacom International for the longest part of his life. And he met me, and I asked him that how should I execute this project? Like, this is how I want to do this. This is the entire idea I have. So to which he said that, Devang, like I don't distrust you on the content. Like, you can do the content the way you like it, but why do you want to tell a two-dimensional, like a conventional video-based story? Like, it's a lot of people have been doing incredible work, but like he felt that augmented reality or virtual reality is the future of television, and there has to be more than just videos to tell stories. And so he really, really motivated me to use a new technology to tell the story this time. And the seed was planted in my head, and I was very excited to do something about it, even though I had no clue as to where will the money come from, how will I execute the project, and what is it the project that I will end up executing, what technology will I finally use, because I had no clue how virtual reality or augmented reality worked. And even if they did work, I didn't want to do something that was already happening. So then it also just so happened that I was learning geographic information systems at Tufts University that year. And that's where the data part came in. And that's where I learned this incredible software that had been predominantly just used for very academic purposes, for very research based purposes. So I felt that, okay, I have these two worlds. One is this entertainment media, this fiction world, and one is this policy making world. And I want to do something that bridges the gap between the two. And probably this technology can really help me do that. So then I spent 5 months learning the technology and like how can I now spin the role of this technology towards entertainment media and use it for creating something really visually impactful and well informed. So yeah, that's how fiction, data, and technology came into play. Now, how did you gather data for mapping the stories or events? So a lot of the data came from like very different data banks that were already present. One of them, the one that I started with, was START. I've noted down the full form of START, which is a national consortium for the study of terrorism and responses to terrorism, which also had a subset called TEVIS, which is Terrorism and Extremist Violence in the United States database. All of these data banks are available on the net. So the way Tevis works is that you have to first apply for permission, and it will take you 2 or 3 weeks to get the permission. And once you get the permission, you can start using it. I think it is free for everyone. My project was academic based, so like I got free access to use it. But it took me 2 or 3 weeks to get the access. And once you get the access, it is very easy to use. You get in, and over there you have a lot of different categories. You select the category that you want. You can select it with the ideology type, with the ideology subtype. Do you want far right wing, far left wing? Do you want environmental? Do you want nationalist, separatist? Do you want a single incident? You can put in all these different categories of incidents that you want. You can select the time frame that you want. Say, for example, you want to have the data for all these extremist incidents for a particular ideology that has happened between 2000 to 2018, or you want it from 1984. So you can select all these different time periods that you want it from. You can select the weapon type, the extent of impact, whether the case is ongoing in the court, whether the case is not ongoing in the court. You can have all these categories. And once you punch in all these categories, you can put as many as you want. You can put them just 1 or 2 categories, even that's fine. And then it is going to produce all the data, which you can download in the form of a CSV file, which is kind of like an Excel sheet, which gives you all the coordinates of all the points, like where these incidents have happened. So you have the exact coordinates where the incident has happened. You have what was the incident that happened. You have who were the perpetrators, what was the ideology, all of those details in a CSV sheet. And then that can be then put into the geographic information system software, where that data is converted into actual points, which are placed on the map of the United States. And then you can start your trend generation and analysis and like all the different things that you want to do with this data. So that's where the data part came into play. But also, it is important to mention at this point that once I had all this data, I also had to do a lot of literature review, just to make sure that my understanding of these extremist incidents and these extremist ideologies is right. And also, at some point, I'd started viewing this extremism as a character. Like, how if extremism itself was a living, breathing character, how would it evolve? How would it react? How would I tell its stories? And which came to me that when I was doing all this literature review, I used the exact statements that were used by the perpetrators of these incidents and put them in my talk directly. So which is what awarded it the gravitas and the impact that it needed, because these were like actual statements by the perpetrators that were used, which I weaved into a poetry and put it up there. But also without you realizing till the very end that it is extremism that I'm talking about. So that is how the entire data collection and story creation process happened. Next question. Were there any obstacles you faced during gathering the survey data? So like, this is not exactly a survey data, but this is like an actual data of like actual incidents that have happened, where there are these data banks that have been doing a wonderful job of creating this entire database, which is very accessible, which is something that anybody can use. But this is not a survey. This is not something that was put out for trend generation already. This is like actual robust data, which you can use to generate trends. So that is a part of it. And also, like, there were no obstacles per se, but like there was a lot of thought that was put into how exactly do I want to go forward with the analysis of this data, and how do I want to visually represent this data. Because any person who has done any kind of statistical analysis, they know that how vulnerable a data set can be to even a teeny tiny change in any of the parameters. Like the moment you change a little bit, like it shows a drastic impact on the overall data. And I was dealing with data that was almost 20 years. So I had to read a lot of things, and I had a wonderful support system, a wonderful academic support system that helped me navigate through this entire time to figure out what are the right intervals of time that need to be chosen. What is the best representation? Like, should I represent them? What are the best colors? Should it be graduated circles? Should it be like what is the level that I'm going to? Is it just counties? Is it just tracts? Is it an entire state in the United States? So it was a lot of thought process that was put into that. What would be the best representation that is not too reductionist, but is also not too sensationalistic? Because if it would have been any of those two things, then it would have defeated the entire purpose of doing this entire talk. So how do I navigate this entire problem? The other problem that was there, that is a problem with GIS per se, but which GIS helps to solve at some level, is the projection. Now, what exactly is projection is that one of the biggest surprises that I got after taking this course is that the idea of the world map that I have in my head and that everybody has in their head, the world map that they have seen, when you Google world map, like the first image that will come on Google is wrong. It is a completely wrong projection. It's called the Mercator projection, and it is not an accurate representation of what the globe actually is. So look at it this way: that this is a globe, this is a sphere, and when you're converting it into a 2D map, you're just flattening that out into a page. And while you are doing that, a lot of distances are being altered, a lot of shapes are being altered, a lot of sizes are being altered. So the continents, the way you see them in the Mercator projection, are wrong. Like, that's not the exact shape, size of those continents. Like, there are huge anomalies regarding that. So these were like some navigations, these were some problems that I had to face, and I had to find like the right projection, the right time interval that I'm choosing to represent this data. And I would say in my case, a lot of that got very easily navigated by the fact that I was actually using video. Now, what happened with that is, and that's why like the first scene that you see, the first glimpse of like the GIS thing that you see on my TED talk, like in the first few minutes, the first thing is just the earth rotating. Because I could, since it was a video, I didn't have to place it on like a 2D poster and like, have any of the projections. I could just simply place it on the sphere, due to which I never had the projection issue. It wasn't like that this is Earth and the camera is facing on this way and like it is just focusing on this part and the other parts are horribly flattened out. The globe was rotating continuously, due to which like no projections had to be changed. The other problem that I was able to navigate is that whenever you create a poster out of GIS, it is set in stone. It is a particular trend, or it is something that has been, that some data that has been analyzed, that has been put on the poster after due analysis. In the case of a video, like you could see the points flickering. So like, it was able to show you that as and when the incidents were happening, and it was able to show that how dynamic these different incidents were. Like, they were not happening just like one incident at a time. Like, multiple incidents were happening all across the country, but they were also disappearing at the same time, which was the whole point of this, that how is this ideology growing and falling in certain areas. And you need to see that as the years are progressing, some are coming up and some are going down. It is not something that is set in stone, and a video enabled me to do that. So or more than a video, an animation helped me do that. So like, those were like two problems that were really easily navigated just because I was doing an animation and not a 2D poster. Yeah. And next question, is there any particular data collection method you used? So for GIS data, you can just simply look for geospatial data on like anything that you want. Usually the Census Bureau of the country does an amazing job in collecting all of that, and you can download the tables and zip files from there. You have to collect some shape files, which is again something that some census bureaus do, but otherwise like there are some other surveys and organizations that are doing that. So it is highly dependent on like the country and like the country and like even the state that you're looking at. In my case, it was United States, and I could get a lot of data readily available. So it was much more easier for me. And once you get that data, it is in the form of Excel sheets. You can download it and use it. But it is also highly subject to the kind of analysis you are looking at. In my case, it was just simply incidents. So it was a simple vector data that I could download, but otherwise there is also something called the raster data, which involves elevation as well. So, but I for me, that was not required. Like, I didn't have, because I was not doing a very topographical analysis, but that is a possibility as well. Like, that can also happen. And that is actually much more visually appealing than what I did on the stage. And finally, which GIS software did you use for mapping, and who helped you create these results? So I use Esri's ArcMap to do the analysis. And then I used Esri's ArcGIS Pro to do the animation, which would have not been possible without the help of this amazing data scientist whose name is Uku Kasparustalu, who collaborated with me on the project and who helped me create all those beautiful animations, because it required a lot of coding per se, which he knew. And like, he just like, the moment I will tell him that, okay, this is how I want it, this is where the point should go, this is how the colors would be, it was then he would take care of the technical part. And like, we have spent so many hours. Like there have been days when we were spending more than 11 hours in the lab just trying to work these teeny tiny things that were happening, just trying to make sure that whether the earth is rotating from east to west or west to east, like like these teeny tiny things which we take granted for, but it was something that we had to do from the scratch. And had it not been for Uku, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And after all of that was done, I just used Corel Video Studio Pro X10 to put all these animation together and to put some text and to put some music. And that's how all of that was put together. So yeah, I have run out of questions, and this was my work over, I guess you can call it a year, you can call it 5 months, you can call it one day, but all of this work was put together to create those 12 minutes on stage, and it was a really exciting journey. And I'll just leave you guys with my favorite quote from the TEDx talk, that is, there is beauty in complexity. I hope you have a great time. Bye bye.